Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Time Machine, the radio show that will take you back in time through the decades to music's past to discuss what made that time great and the influence it has today. So, right now, I am joined by my team members. So, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Ross Carlin.
And I'm Shaun O'Riordan.
Coming up on the show, we'll be looking at album art, past and present, the return of vinyl, and a special feature on one of the most diverse and unique artists of all time. But first, we all listen to music rather regularly here, right?
That's true.
Yes, that is correct.
So what's your preferred form of listening currently?
Gotta be digital, just it's easy accessible. I've got everything right there. I'm streaming it through like Spotify. I get everything I want for a decent fee a month, so.
It has to be the same. It's cheap for a Spotify account. It's easy and less hassle.
Absolutely. It's also like, portable and stuff like that. You also and it's like if you've got like the premium in that. You basically have infinite.
You can have it on your phone.
Like,
you can while I drive. I put it through the Bluetooth. I have it in my car.
When it happens to me all the time. When I'm like out and about, sometimes like I'll be like, man, I really want to listen to that song. You ever have that where something just pops into your head and you're like, man, I could go and I can just do that.
That was the difference when you had an MP3 player. You had your tracks, maybe 1,000 tracks, but then you wanted to listen to a track that wasn't there. That's what like Spotify and like Amazon Music and that are great, or even Apple Music.
Absolutely. We all say digital as our preferred method, but I think we can all agree here that vinyl and physical record sales have become a lot more prominent in recent years.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like started buying more vinyl just through like it's just become a kind of trend almost in a way. So people have now started getting back into it. But I mean, I'm finding old vinyl in the attic and in the basement and just shifting through it and bringing back some memories.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've had my record player passed down to me, from like my granddad and all his old records, which is maybe I've not listened to them all, but I thought, I want to go out and discover more older ones and even newer ones because the sound is quite incredible sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, Ross, this is what you and Brodie looked at when you went out to Europa Music and talked to the proprietor there.
Indeed, that is what we did.
Well, let's have a listen, shall we?
Here in Stirling, we're outside the Europa Music Shop, a business completely dedicated to the selling of classic vinyl records, both old and new. Before there would be shops like these all over the country, there was no iTunes or Spotify, not even CDs or cassette tapes. If you wanted to play select music in your home, the only way you could do it was by going out and getting a vinyl record. After the invention of the cassette tape, this method did start to dwindle a bit. Much like with all things modern, people prefer things small. Just take your phone for example. Do you see anyone nowadays walking around with brick-shaped phones in their hands? But unlike the brick-shaped phones, vinyl is making a comeback. Inside, it's just like you would imagine, with a variety of covered vinyl records stacked away in boxes all over the shop. T-shirts hanging overhead and walls lined with posters from that classic rock era. Everything's sectioned away and the vinyl genres are cut off by little black pieces of cardboard labelled in white. It's a little cramped possibly, only enough room for maybe 4 or 5 people at once, but it's just like any record shop you've seen in the movies and it has that retro feeling to it.
To some people's surprise, you won't just see Bob Dylan and Tina Turner in this shop's stacks. I can see right in front of me Little Mix and Arctic Monkeys. And to some people's amazement, this is not a rare scene in record shops nowadays. We can see 20th and 21st century artists colliding in a splash of old and new vinyl records. We're now joined with the owner of Europa Music to tell us a little bit more about why he got into this business.
My name's Ewan Duncan and I own Europa Music. My personal taste in music is very wide and varied. All depends on the time of day or mood I'm in. It's I suppose boyhood dream to have a record shop because growing up I played records. I at times was when I was at parties I was always the person in the corner putting the records on, and I started DJing in '77, and then a record shop came up for grabs and I leapt at the opportunity, to say the least. Mid-90s through to even up to 10 years ago, and lots of product was selling, and then suddenly it wasn't selling because all the kids were saying, "Oh, we can get this for nothing on the internet," and that definitely affected sales. And now, because of the resurgence, possibly because of Record Store Day, and or it's hip and trendy again, folk are picking up on it. But the young crew that have picked up enough of it, some of it is because their parents have kept the record collections, and or they suddenly go, well, they prefer to actually get the original items. When I'm ordering new albums in, I'm maybe ordering 10 of a new album on vinyl and 1 on CD. That's for us is it shows roughly how much CDs are selling compared to vinyl now. We hear in analog. Records were made to be played in an analog machine, not in a digital machine, and it's just a warmer sound. You can find us in 10 Friar Street in Stirling and FK8 1HA, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else.
Thank you very much again to you and Duncan for that interview. Throughout generations of young and old, we have seen that this resurgence has been primarily done by 16 to 25 year olds, with the vinyl sales now being responsible for 3% of all music consumed. And with the world we live in of so many technological advances, as Ross identified earlier, this is an amazing comeback, especially for our generation who are said to be one of the most debatable in what they like and don't like. Children are asking their parents for vinyl, they're asking for that Sam Smith one for Christmas, they're asking for maybe the Tina Turner again for their Christmas also. With 2016 bringing in 3 million vinyl sales, compared to its lowest point in 2007 of only being 250,000 sales, we have seen a dramatic rise in not just vinyl but also the trends. And again last year we saw the sales rise to 4.1 million, and if this continues to rise, then there could just be a time soon where it's not even a resurgence anymore, it's just a way of life, and the next generation can embrace this and keep it alive.
So as you can see, vinyl is still going strong. Maybe it's dipped for a while, but it's surviving, and it's now making a grand comeback. Thank you from Brodie and myself for listening, and we'll see you in a bit.
That's very interesting, Ross. So Mr. Duncan said that vinyl is so popular nowadays because it sounds better than digital. Is that surprising to you?
Not really, not after hearing some just through vinyl. It just sounds better than you do through digital. And I mean, that's what he was saying was, like, the human ear is meant to hear in this precise word that's escaping me now, but it's through vinyl that you hear it in the natural way it's supposed to be heard. And they've spent like all this money trying to replicate that through the digital medium, through all these speakers, and they just can't get it. So as long as you have a decent record player, you're getting this unique sound that you won't get through any digital means, which is why he personally thinks that vinyl's still making this comeback. And to an extent I would agree with him. It does sound different. It does sound a bit more clean, crisp, and overall nice to listen to.
Yeah, you mentioned there the good sound system as well, which is vital. And I mean, all the scratches you get, all that crackling, all that authenticness that you get that you don't get from digital. You can compare it to films of old, films shot on film rather than digital. You get all the wee crackles. It makes it living in the moment. You get I don't know. It's a bit. It's not as clean. It's you can get that nostalgia factor. You can get things like that.
Yeah. I mean, you must listen to records like a decent amount, considering you have a probably the largest collection of anyone in this room.
Yeah, well, probably, yeah. It's not a massive collection, but as I said, since I got my record player passed down to me, I've listened to a lot more, bought a lot more.
Yeah, and in like the whatever amount you have, is there any records that you really, any albums that you really love, anything that you're like, oh, that's good?
See, for like old records, so I look out for film soundtracks, so they're like my go-to, and I go for the classic ones. I've had like Tom Petty, and we've had like old Elvis ones, and also like David Bowie as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not surprised. Obviously, that you're a Bowie fan, because just now you took a look back at the evolution of Bowie throughout his years and his career. So let's take a listen to that, shall we?
In the music industry, or any industry for that matter, maintaining a prolonged career can be a difficult and challenging task. However, many artists have done it, and some even continuing to this day. The likes of Bruce Springsteen is still going strong after 45 years, and acts like the Rolling Stones and Paul Simon are still selling out venues with 50 plus years in the business. Now, each of these artists have had an iconic album or two, but rarely has a musician changed their image as much or even stayed as relevant as one individual. David Bowie. With 20 studio albums to his name and spanning a nearly 50-year career that kept going up until his death 2 days after his 67th birthday in 2016. Rarely has an artist had so much influence not just in music circles but to the general population. From becoming a film star with hits like The Man Who Fell to Earth, Merry Christmas Mr. Lawrence, and the ever popular Labyrinth. Fashion icon to changing attitudes about the LGBT community. The 70s may have been his most productive decade in terms of musicality, releasing 11 albums with every one sounding different from the last. It was the 80s that proved to be his most successful, however, commercially at least, with 5 albums, 2 of which went platinum, the same number as the previous decade, with 4 UK number 1s, a feat surprisingly never managed in the 70s.
Do you remember a guy that's been in such another song? I've heard a rumor from ground control. Oh no, don't say it's true.
After a period of struggling to find success, it was the breakout hit in 1969's Space Oddity that led to the release of the 1972 album Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and seems to change the music landscape forever, adopting his first alias, Ziggy Stardust, that at first shocked and then awed audiences. However, instead of resting on his laurels, and at the height of the Ziggy mania, Bowie decided to cut Ziggy's life short, which for some may have been a career-ending move, but for Bowie, it was the start of a trope he would use quite often in his musical career.
And I'm floating in a most peculiar way.
Other personas included Halloween Jack, Aladdin Sane, and the Thin White Duke, all created and ended in the 70s. Bowie rolled with the times like no other musician, so much so that some of the transitions alienated his fan base. The fans that were listening to the glam rock opera albums like Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane to get away from the dark days of the 70s Britain weren't wanting the soft pop and big production capitalist values of 80s albums like Scary Monsters and the Nile Rodgers produced Let's Dance, which Bowie fully embraced. Why don't we speak to someone who was there at the height of Bowie mania? I spoke to college lecturer and lifelong fan of Bowie, Andy McCall, about the influence of Bowie not only in hindsight but through the time of each decade, with a mention to Andy's own personal musical tastes.
I think a sense of change was definitely there. As kids you could feel it, you know. I think politically we were changing. I think someone said recently that, and I think it's quite true, that the kind of revolution of the 60s took a long time to hit Scotland, and you know, the 70s kind of was our 60s. That was the revolution that happened. Musically, I think actually when you look back, well obviously as kids we were quite obsessed with the changes that were happening in terms of glam rock. Glam rock was the huge thing for us. But in hindsight, when you look back in glam rock, a lot of it is like it's kind of like a talent, a 50s talent night or something, a caravan. The Station to Station album, which at that time was, it sounded like nothing else that was going on. There was the kind of tail end, the singer-songwriter thing, there was the arrival of punk. And this wasn't punk, but it was like something, it sounds incredible on the radio. And even now when it comes on the radio, you think, what is that? It's got that kind of, so even at that point, he was creating music and creating art really, which stood out, which was unique, and that really struck me. I think that probably would be my favourite album. You know, if you look at even up to 2 days before he died, he was releasing stuff that was incredibly relevant, and just, I think that's the thing with him, that his relevance has never really dimmed. He's always been of the moment and of the time.
As Andy mentioned, another thing that was unique about Bowie was his creation of art right up until his death, releasing a powerful final album during a time of great illness that not only reflects on his musical career and life while commenting on his legacy, but also made sure of Bowie's relevance and confirming that he was still ahead of his time.
Look up here, I'm in heaven.
Yep, no one can quite reinvent themselves like David Bowie. So, Shaun, what's your favourite Bowie song? Do you have one?
Bowie's song? I know you're putting me in a position there. You'd have to come back to me. It changes from day to day. Right now, there you go, changes. That would be the one. Right now.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Ross? Do you have a particular favourite?
I mean, he's not the artist I listen to the most, but I'd probably say Under Pressure is one that stuck with me through the years. Just, I like the general sound of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I gotta say Rock and Roll Suicide's probably the best one, because that's what I say. I like, me and my brother, he's a bigger Bowie fan than me, even though I'm also quite a fan. It's like, we decided that Rock and Roll Suicide is factually the best song ever made. Like, you know, you can have your opinion on like your favorite song or your favorite, like, whatever. Point is, factually speaking, scientifically, if you did a report, if you got like the greatest minds in the world to discuss the best song ever
based
made,
on science, then
that's the one. That's the one. Based on fact. We're not talking opinions here. Like, yeah, think whatever you want, but Rock and Roll Suicide is the best song ever
that
made.
must come from the best album then.
Absolutely. You know, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. It's a classic. It's a classic, you know? And definitely one of my favourite parts about the album, not just that like every song is a 10 out of 10, just saying, is that the album art is so iconic, it's so legendary, and it's just like it's a piece of the listening experience, and that like
history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at that album cover, you sort of can hear the album in your mind, and I think this is a key theme of like what I looked at, because I've been looking at a whole host of album covers to talk about how album art has changed throughout history. So
yeah,
why don't we listen to that? They say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but should you judge an album by its cover? Album covers have been a mainstay within the music industry since Nat King Cole's King Cole Trio album in 1945. However, I found that album art has become increasingly unremarkable in recent years. Why is that? Well, I think it all comes back to the biggest change in recent music history: the way we consume music. Music is now more easy to find than ever thanks to streaming services, where everything you could want to listen to is a click away, and where algorithms can fling a bunch of songs that's robo-brain determined you will enjoy at you. But if you ask anyone, chances are their favourite bit of album art will be off an older, more classic album. Back before the internet became a mainstay, however, you could walk into a shop with no idea what you want, but a striking piece of album art catches your eye and you decide to try it. You might hate it, you might have found your new favourite album. Point is, that album art communicated something to you. It elicited an emotion from you. And I think that's what the best album art should do. When I think about my favourite album covers, I think of Asia's hand-painted trippy sci-fi scenes on basically every album they ever made. I like Bjork's enigmatic gaze on Debut. I like Bowie's Black Star, as majestic and awe-inspiring as it is bleak and depressing. But I'm starting to sound all arty-farty now. Back in my day, you know. I mean, who really cares? It's just album art, you know? It doesn't matter, right? No, I think it does. Album art should make you feel something. It should be as iconic as the album itself. Album art should elevate the work rather than just be a wee side attraction. I've been implying that all album art is bad nowadays, but that's actually not the case. If you want to find some quality album art from this year, look no further than Ariana Grande's single, Thank You, Next. Whether you like the song or the artist or not, this song lit the internet on fire with all kinds of memes and gags and goofs and gaffs and all that jazz. And that is definitely because of the undoubtedly striking artwork that came with this song. It's simple, but it's so direct with what it's trying to say, as well as being deep enough that you feel smart picking apart its hidden meanings. I know memes aren't like a big deal, but people saw this art and were struck by it. It elicited an emotion in them because it's relatable and simple, and as such, I think this drastically boosted the song's notoriety. I haven't listened to a single Ariana Grande song, but I know this one. That's the power of album art. It should make you feel something. So, do you guys think that album art like matters in today's music scene?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, just when we were doing the interview with Duncan at the Europa Music, just flicking through the vinyl and looking at the covers, it's just really nice to look at them. Some of them have really so much detail in them. It takes you back to the 70s, 80s. Just even looking at some of the unique special editions they made for movie soundtracks or game soundtracks, you get some really unique pieces like Last of Us that came out like in 2014, had like unique vinyl art, which was just incredible to look at. So I'd definitely say it does have an influence. Maybe not so much in the terms of CDs, but on vinyl definitely, because it's just so big and massive.
I think that's one of the things why it's so popular again. It's because even some people buy records and they won't listen to them, but they'll have them on show. If people come on and, I've got this Pink Floyd record, The Dark Side of the Moon, look how great it is. If you've got that in CD, it's just kind of in the corner. But it is certainly back in the day, I think many people discovered music through album art. For modern artists, not so much.
It's all music videos now.
As we say, we're listening through digital. I don't look at the album art on Spotify and be like I'll listen to that.
In the corner.
Exactly, it's not much.
Take center stage.
So I don't think it's important for modern music, but I think it's like nostalgia. It's like a flashback.
Aye. Something kind of like a mark of the time sort of thing.
Yeah, going into a record store and saying, I've not seen that album art for ages, or I've not seen that at all, and I think I'll go and check them out. You might not necessarily buy the record, but you certainly will give them a listen.
Yeah, I mean, when I look for new music, I like a lot of the time you can't even see the album art on digital mediums. If you go on like Spotify, Discover Weekly or whatever, it should be the list of like the song names. You want to get like a picture with it. And I think when I was a kid and I bought CDs and stuff, even though that's like not like as big a deal on CDs, definitely I would not buy stuff because it had a bad cover on it. I would just be like, I don't want to listen to that. That looks dodgy. You know, I think absolutely, especially when you're young or whatever. I think just looking at a cover can have an impact on whether or not you listen to a song or a record or not.
Exactly. You don't have to put much
effort
into it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like nowadays, it's just not one of them things that you need to do.
Aye, like whole artists could like make a name for themselves off of vinyl art back in the day, but now it's just get a photographer, snap a couple of photos.
No doubting that there is some good modern ones there.
But like a lot of this stuff is nowadays is Photoshop. Like you rarely ever get like actual like physical painters on stuff anymore. Like I mentioned it in the wee bit there, but if you look at stuff that Asia made, that band has a bunch of really crazy looking album art, and that couldn't have been that was all done by hand. It was.
So would you say you have a favourite album art?
Oh, that's tough. No, I can't even answer that, man. I can't even answer that.
What's one that sticks out in your head then?
Oh, off the top of my head. White Album by the Beatles. just a big white square. That's it. That's the one.
That's the one you put.
It's timeless.
It might be timeless, but time's up for us. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed. This is James, Ross, and Shaun signing off. See ya.